For more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Along with Dave Manouk, along with Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel, here for the next couple of hours, talk everything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. We'll touch on the playoffs as well. Tons to talk about as we kick off the Saturday morning of your long weekend. Gentlemen, good to see you both. I did not get the dress code notice for today, but nonetheless, we'll carry on with me in my black and you both in your orangey red outfits. Nice to see both of you.
You know, Drew, I have to be honest with you. Thank you. Yeah, it's Red IC Day here for the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm surprised. I had the over-under at like 30 seconds, you mentioning Scotty Scheffler, and then dropping the fact that you were at Valhalla in 2014, Dave. So I guess, you know, I stole Drew's thunder a little bit, but I still don't. Can somebody explain to me how he was allowed to golf after that?
Well, he's white, so that goes a long way to start with.
Oh, no, you didn't go there.
The best tweet I saw about it was somebody tweeted, 5:50 a.m., get arrested. 6:50 a.m., get booked into prison. 7:50 a.m., get bail. 8:50 a.m., make it to your tea time. And then somebody said that's the whitest shit they've ever seen in their life, which I thought was pretty
Didn't he birdie the first hole? Like, didn't he play, like, wasn't he like 5 under or something?
He shot 5 under. It was incredible. It was a scene. Like, I woke up yesterday morning, and I know we're already off the rails, but that's okay. I woke up yesterday morning, looked at my phone and said, world number 1 golfer got arrested. And to have the video of it all, it was absolutely incredible. When I was at Valhalla, as you said, 10 years ago, for the last PGA championship, I thought, it was a totally rain-delayed tournament. It was like the last group, Rory McIlroy won, but the last hole was actually played as almost a fivesome. He hit up with the group in front of him because he wanted to finish, and he hit the winning putt in almost pitch black darkness. I thought, okay, well, that's a pretty interesting thing. It's going to be hard for it, them to exceed that 10 years later. And then obviously they blew that out of the water yesterday with the drama around Scotty Scheffler. But thank you for bringing it up, because I was going to make a joke.
PGA lunch, Drew?
I was going to make a joke about you getting arrested maybe to start the show. Dave was going to have to come downstairs and haul you away to begin. But anyways, it was a wild scene there in Louisville yesterday. And most importantly, we'll send our condolences to the gentleman who passed away, which is sort of the catalyst that led off to all this chaos, who got hit by the shuttle bus just trying to get to the course. And so that's, a tragedy is sort of lost in all this ridiculousness of a man losing his life. And that shouldn't go unnoticed and not recognized as the sort of jokes come as a result of everything else that happened. Yes, Dave does look a little bit bored there. Dave, why don't you tell us about the Moose Roundtable? There you go.
For those listening on the podcast, Happy Jets fan says Dave looks bored, LOL. I guess I don't know. Do you look bored, Dave? I think you're just kind of starting off a little bit slowly.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually I let you two kind of drone on for a little bit while I think about things I've got to do later in the day. But yeah, no, I mean, thanks, Drew. I mean, I did get a chance to do 2 hours of Moose chatter. I said to Daniel and Austin how exciting it was to not be limited to a Moose minute. And actually, yesterday I was shopping, and as I'm walking through the parking lot, some guy yelled out of his car door, "Nuke Moose minute." So that was pretty awesome. And
what were you shopping for, Dave?
I was at Chalmerdines getting some stuff for the backyard. Got to get ready for the season.
You put a lot of care into the backyard. The front yard gets a little bit neglected, I got to say.
It's very true. I said to Dave, like, he's going to need a riding mower. Like, his grass is got to be like 4 feet tall. You're right. There. I mean, it's party in the back, and then I don't know what in the front.
Business in the or unkempt in the front.
Exactly. So no, we had a good chat on Thursday with head coach Mark Morrison, GM Craig Heisinger, and of course Tyrell Bauer, Parker Ford, and Dillon.
Ty was awesome, Dave. I told you I only caught a portion of it because I was working. Hopefully Peter Woods of Hockey Manitoba is not listening, but yeah, I mean Tyrell Bauer was just such a refreshing interview, and I caught a little bit of Dillon Anhorn as well. He's got a great flow, by the way.
Yeah.
And you can tell that he's excited already for next year, even though the 23-24 season didn't end. But you know, at the end of the day, awesome job by you, and big thanks for Finker and the Goose for joining you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Ez. And it was a good couple of hours. It was insightful. We got some interesting conversations out of the management. So if you haven't had a chance, and I'll probably cut some of that up so you can listen to it, digest it in easily to digest portions. But no, it was a lot of good talk, and like I said, you know, interesting insight from the players. You know, like as he said, Dillon Anhorn is an interesting guy, and 25 years old, just finishing college, but he'll be I think an offensive defenseman that, you know, something that the Moose will need, because most likely no Ville Heinola with the Moose next year. So, or not most likely, there won't be a Ville Heinola with the Moose. So they'll need
Ville Heinola plays the majority of the year with the Moose next year. I'm going to be jumping into the Red River.
As there won't be an opportunity, because he'll be claimed long before that if they tried to put him on waivers. But anyways,
he'll play for the Jets next year. I think that's going to tie in to the news of Scotty Billeck earlier this week.
And here's the tweet. I have it up there on the screen in case anybody hasn't seen it yet. And Scotty's going to join us.
Zoom in, Drew. Zoom in.
I'll try and zoom in even further. Yeah, it's, you know, I'll hang on. Let me work my magic here. Trying to do two things at once. I don't think that was
good.
What I wanted
You don't
to
have to zoom in. Just read it.
Okay, fair enough. What I was going to say, I'm told the likelihood of Brendan Dillon returning to the Jets next year is slim at best, and he will become a UFA. Sources say Dillon didn't receive an offer and held no conversations regarding an extension during the season. He hasn't heard from the team since it ended. That is what Scott Billeck tweeted a few days ago on the 15th, early in the morning, and then scrolling down to add to this, there's still hope from Dillon's side that it could work out before July 1. He said that during his exit interview, and that remains true, I'm told. So that's what Scotty Billeck, our good friend, had to say regarding Brendan Dillon and his future here in Winnipeg. And I have to say, gentlemen, I'm not particularly surprised at this report by Scotty Billeck. I think all the tea leaves were sort of pointing this way simply because from my estimation, there's a salary cap, which isn't in and of itself news, and there's a finite, amount of money that can go around. And Dylan Samberg, to me, it's less about Brendan Dillon and more about Dylan Samberg. And I think that the team's hope and the team's expectation that he can move into that elevated role, thus making Brendan Dillon a little bit more expendable. I mean, Dillon, 33 years old, seems like the kind of guy who, you want a young player to be able to come up and replace a veteran player who's hitting unrestricted free agency.
Yeah, absolutely, Drew. You touched on a bunch of things there, right? I don't think it's, as you mentioned, just one thing. I mean, his age, I think, factors in, right? Like he's not 27 years old. He's 33 years old.
He'll be most likely in November.
Yeah, exactly. And he, he's most likely, I'm just, off the top of my head, thinking his agent and him probably want a 3 or 4 year deal. I don't think a guy like Brendan Dillon is, Dave, seeking like a 6 or 7 year deal at this point. I don't think any team would give that to him, all due respect to Brendan Dillon, but I'm thinking he's probably looking for a 3 or 4 year deal. And, making $3.9 million a year, I think it's safe to say, maybe he gets a little bit of a raise or, stays around that kind of $4 million. Like, I don't think he's going up to $5 million a year, Drew. Oh. But, I mean, $4 million is significant. That makes him one of your higher paid defensemen, right? Like, obviously not as high paid as Josh Morrissey or Neil Pionk or Nate Schmidt. Yeah. But, he's making $4 million, so he would be your fourth highest paid defenseman in theory if you re-signed him, not factoring in Dylan DeMello. But I think what you say there, Drew, about Dylan Samberg is accurate. I've already said many times on this show, I think Samberg is the second best defenseman after Josh Morrissey. I think numbers back that up. He was one of the best third pairing defensemen in the league, especially when he was paired up with Schmitty, right? And I think Ville Heinola factors in big time here. He's a left shot defenseman. Mm-hmm. Yes, can he play the right side? Of course. But I think next year, I've said this, ideally your left side is Morrissey, Samberg, and Heinola. And I think that's a really good left side. I don't know if, where Logan Stanley fits into that. I think he's probably, if the Jets keep him, he's your 7th defenseman. I don't know if Colin Miller is a guy that the Jets would re-sign, but I just think with Dillon's age and the fact that you've got 2 young defensemen in Samberg and Heinola, because Samberg at 25 years old is relatively young compared to Brendan Dillon. And I don't think, we're not saying we don't like Dillon. I think Dillon has been a very good defenseman in his time with the Jets, Dave. I also think, though, that Dylan DeMello is a bigger priority. And I found a comparable. I was doing some research. If you want me to get into that later, I think, it's not going to surprise anybody, but I think, Dylan DeMello is probably going to be in that $4 to $4.5 million range. The guy I looked at was Nick Jensen on the Washington Capitals, more of a defensive defenseman. He's 33 years old. He signed his contract when he was 31. But if you want a comparable, there might be a better one out there. But I think Dylan DeMello, you're probably looking at a 3 or 4 year deal at around $4 to $4.5 million a year. So when you factor that in, guys, Cole Perfetti's going to get a raise. Scheifele and Hellebuck's contracts are coming up. And I also think the Jets are trying to save some money to bring in some free agents, right? We know they're going to have to replace Tyler Toffoli. They're most likely going to look to upgrade the right side of their defense. So again, we're not saying that Dillon isn't a great defenseman. We're just saying that he just doesn't fit in.
Game.
He doesn't fit into the long-term plans. Exactly, Drew.
It's a numbers game, Dave. And frankly, this is how you want it to work. You want to get the most out of a veteran player, and the Jets, of course, acquired Dillon via trade. So it's not like he was a free agent signing, but you want to get the most out of a veteran player on the contract and then have a younger player sort of build up to the point where you can replace him. And that seems to be the trajectory for Dylan Samberg. So I just think this is a, business being business situation that the Jets just say, Brendan Dillon just doesn't really fit moving forward, given all the other younger pieces that are at play.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. And Scott's report was certainly interesting, but Brendan Dillon essentially told us that there wasn't really much conversation. I think Kevin Cheveldayoff said they talked, but that there was really no significant move. Like, I think this was Chevy's comment. We have 2 guys that are very, very important to this organization, and Brendan Dillon, Dylan DeMello, both guys that we would like to have back, both guys who are a big part of this team. And then he said, we communicated with their agents in both of those situations that it wasn't a matter of if, it was a matter of when, and what just wasn't at that point in time. And I understand that from their point of view, right? Like, they wanted to have the team focused on the playoffs and, the push for the playoffs, I should say, and not, trying to worry about, well, if they sign one and then can't get the other guy signed, what kind of schism that could potentially cause in the room. So look, at the end of the day, you've got a guy who's 33 years old and going to be 34 in November. This is his opportunity to cash in, to get a big deal. Now, Brendan Dillon himself said it's about trying to win a Stanley Cup. He's not, it's not necessary. He knows he's going to get paid. So for him, it's about fit. It's about opportunity. Now, the Canucks are looking like a pretty good opportunity if the BC boy goes back home and tries to get a deal there. But I just think that it's one of those, it just seems like the natural progression. You have to do something if you're the Winnipeg Jets, right? You've got Josh Morrissey, undisputed #1 left side guy. Dylan Samberg, your 2017 second rounder. You were there, in Chicago when he got drafted. For years, we've talked about this.
I wasn't in the United Center. I was in a hotel with Huss, and then he was smoking cigarettes during commercial breaks.
That's true.
But yes, I was in Chicago
in the bathroom. In the bathroom is where he was smoking.
Yeah, because he didn't want to walk to the street. Yeah,
you were in Chicago, is what I'm getting at. The point is that the one thing with the Jets, and we're seeing it, is that you have guys who are groomed for roles. And Dylan Samberg was in my mind, was always going to be the guy you wanted to be behind Josh Morrissey eventually. He's big. He's physical. And sure, he got exposed in the playoffs. I mean, that's fine. A lot of Jets, for the record, folks, I was going to say the whole team got exposed in the playoffs. So they're all going to have to work on things. And let me tell you something. Dylan Samberg getting another full season of NHL work in that second pairing role, I suspect will have him ready to go in terms of, that sort of opportunity. But again, these guys will have to sink or swim based on what they're able to do. It's a risk, but that's a calculated risk. And then, of course, as he says, you got Ville Heinola, who's going to need an opportunity. And, I know Doug put that he's trade bait. Well, that could be potentially, but you also have to look at, do you want Logan Stanley as your third pairing guy?
No.
Why would you trade? Like I'm just throwing out this out there because obviously we're just having a conversation. Like, I'm not saying I'm not trying to act as Chevy here, but why would you spend so much time developing him? And you've already lost Declan Chisholm. Like, why would you trade Ville Heinola at this point, especially with how well he played for the Moose, Dave? I just don't get when people talk about, him being trade bait. Like, he's a great young defenseman who you've got under team control. Don't you want him being a third pairing defenseman next year?
Unless somebody's making you some sort of absurd Godfather offer for him, which, by the way, doesn't happen nowadays. Marty Erat isn't getting traded for Philip Forsberg in 2024 anymore.
Great reference.
That doesn't happen. The teams are smarter than that, and the GMs, even if they are desperate, don't sabotage the future like that anymore.
Well, and Drew, just to highlight this comment, you're going to have to incorporate young players on their ELC. Well, Ville won't be on a ELC, but it's the idea of making the cap work and making changes. So, like I said, that's another thing you have to realize, because as he said it, everybody's like, oh, well, the cap's going up. Well, so are the the caps of Connor Hellebuck and Mark Scheifele.
Yeah, so salaries aren't going down.
The Jets have $13 million in cap space for next year. Now, the players they need, and that's factoring in the raises for Scheifele and Hellebuck and everything else. The players that they need, obviously they want some of that money they'd love to sign Sean Monahan using some of that money. They're going to need to sign Gustafson and Cole Perfetti to the contract extension. They're both RFAs. Some of that's going to go to Dillon DeMello if they're able to keep Dillon DeMello. There's only so much money. There's only so much money, and Brendan Dillon just doesn't, that money can't be allocated to him given what you have coming up in the pipeline.
Exactly.
Whereas for a guy like Dillon DeMello, because you can't look at one without looking at the other, I feel the decisions of both are very much intertwined. Look, you take Dillon DeMello off the Jets' right side. It's atrocious.
Yes.
It's simply atrocious. It might be pretty bad as is, with all due respect to
and you also don't have a lot of players under contract for next year, right? Because Colin Miller isn't under contract.
Right.
And all due respect to Elias Salamonson, Dave and I were talking about him before we went live here. Elias Salamonson, I'm high on him. I'm high on Salamonson, just like everybody is. But you can't expect Salamonson to go in and play a top pairing or second pairing role in his first year in the NHL, Dave. I think you'd agree he's probably got some time with the Moose coming up.
Absolutely. For sure. Not any question.
Expected surprise that you can't make that your plan for the offseason, because that would just be a silly thing to prognosticate that he's going to be able to step into an NHL role immediately. That just doesn't usually happen. It's not how True North has typically handled their young prospects. It's just not the MO of this team. If he ends up exceeding expectations, then great. That's a great problem to deal with, in October, November, December, January as the season goes on. But you need Dillon DeMello, and you need Dillon DeMello not only for what DeMello brings to the right side, but for how he plays with Josh Morrissey. That's your priority free agent on the back end, just because Morrissey and DeMello fit so well together. You just pencil them in together. You hope they play 82 games together, and you don't have to worry that much about it. And by the way, DeMello's younger than Dillon is as well.
Yeah, and just to pivot here a little bit, Drew, and then get back to Brendan Dillon and Dillon DeMello. Choices TK, by the way, is on fire this morning. Loving all the comments. For those listening on the pod, he's asking what Perfetti's next contract.
Well,
we can all agree.
After.
Well, we can talk about it after, but I think we all agree it's going to be a bridge contract. I don't think, based on what happened last year, Dave, with his usage and being a healthy scratch, I could be wrong here, but if you're Cole Perfetti and his agent, just looking at it from their perspective, why would you be signing a long-term deal now? And I think for the Jets, they'd like to keep that cap hit down. So, we took the comment off, but I think you're probably looking at a 2-year, $3 million a year deal, something like that for Perfetti. Right?
Yeah,
$3 million a year. Something
Perfetti's going to get done. It's going to be very similar to all the other bridge deals this team has done as of late. It's not going to be. I don't think there's going to be anything contentious there. It's going to be a bridge deal, and he's going to get then a further opportunity, and then sign to a longer deal after the fact. I just don't see any other reason to do anything else with regard to Perfetti. I think it'll just happen later in the summer, like it always does. We've all been around here long enough around this game to see how these contracts work. He's a player who doesn't have any arbitration eligibility. He's not a priority. The Jets have their checklist of things you need to tick off before you move to the RFAs without arbitration.
I think we agree, Drew,
eligibility.
that Monahan and DeMello are at the top of that list.
Absolutely. Those are the guys you want to get done in the next, ideally you'd love to get them done in the next couple of weeks so that you don't even have to get close to July 1st worrying about them. If you can get those guys under contract before free agency starts, Dave, well, then you're feeling in a much better place. Come the actual free agency where you're shopping not for your own players, but for players that might be free from other teams.
Yeah, for sure. And we know the Jets don't exactly hit home runs when it comes to free agency. So that's something that has to be a factor. But and more importantly, for those of us who love a little Jets content during the offseason, I'll be all for some signings in the next little bit. But yes, I mean, it's not a question that you definitely need. People can say Dillon DeMello is not a true first pairing defenseman. I have time for that to say that, would you rather see Dillon DeMello with, Dylan Samberg is your second pairing? I sure would. I think that'd be fantastic. If the Jets, we've talked about it. If the Jets could truly get someone who can be paired up beside Josh Morrissey.
Chris Tanev.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Chris
I don't know
Tanev,
if you guys watched. I know, by the way, here's my opportunity to throw Dave M under the bus, even though he ran the ICOT pool. I don't know what you're doing up at 1:30 in the morning when you should be sleeping, getting ready for IC, Dave. But Chris Tanev looks so good on that Stars back end. That's exactly what they needed. I mean, they already had Heiskanen, Thomas Harley, Essa Lindell, Ryan Suter. You throw Tanev in there, Dave. Yeah. And to me, that's a perfect fit on the Jets top pair, but he's probably going to make $6 million a year.
His numbers through 13 games against the Golden Knights and the Avs or something like, I think he's been on the ice for 13 goals for and maybe 1 or 2 goals against. It's something absolutely insane how great he's played so far in these playoffs, Dave. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, the comment Rob said, isn't Tanev older than Dillon? He's 34. But again,
but you give him a 2-year deal or you give him a 3-year deal. And
look, if he wins a cup, he might be more inclined to just kind of, try and
stay with Dallas.
Well, that's possible. Of course, Dallas looks very good, but no, I mean, look, there's no question that you need someone on that right side. And I just think, let's just keep it back to the whole Dillon thing.
Brett Pesce.
Well, there's lots of opportunities. There's lots of guys that you're going to be able to try and get, peel away. And I think that's not a bad thing. But I just think that, I think Dillon is a priority because you have this Elias Salamonson. But again, I saw him in training camp with the Jets and the Moose last year. And I know he had a really good year with Schlefka and they won the SHL championship. But I'm not going to pretend that I watched any of the games, so I can't tell you about his. I know a lot of folks were excited.
Slacker. What are we paying you for?
Exactly. Not for that is what I'll tell you. So, anyways, but I can say that there's a lot of excitement surrounding him. But the expectation would be that he'll be coming over to North America next year, and he'll play with the Moose, is my guess, in a big role on that right side with potentially fellow Swede Simon Lundmark. Well, he'll also be on the right side. But I guess what I'm getting at is you need kind of that fill-in gap to kind of augment those young guys who, again, will take that jump in 25, 26. But for 24, 25, like I said, Dillon DeMello is a key because right now, what are you going to do? You're going to let Dillon DeMello walk, and then you have Neil Pionk, Nate Schmidt, and
no.
Someone else on the right side.
Not an option. No.
I mean,
I look, guys, I usually, I try to stay away from these Ginsburg guarantees, but I'm pretty sure I can guarantee you that the Jets are going to sign Dillon DeMello.
I think they're probably working. I think they want to because I think they know.
Well, and it's mutual.
He had a fantastic season, guys. Like, why would you like? I think it's an absurd notion to think that. I mean, unless Dillon DeMello is asking for something ridiculous like $7 million a year, and they can't come to an agreement, but. I think Brendan Dillon is going to sign with another team, and I think DeMello is going to be re-signed to 3 or 4 years. That's my prediction.
It wasn't that many years ago that you could have had Dillon DeMello for free in at the expansion draft for Seattle.
Yeah, well, but the point isn't that. The point is that
Jets protect him.
No, they protected Logan Stanley.
Don't you remember that was that? Of course, Drew. Let's just put it into perspective. Folks were also wanting Josh Morrissey to be exposed in that draft, if you remember. So I like I said, the one thing with DeMello that I think bears repeating is the fact that it's mutual. There's definitely a guy who's setting down roots, who's expecting another child on the way. So from that perspective, for him to have that permanence and that, he's already got a comfort with the group. I can't see, again, like I said, I can't see it getting to July 1st without him being signed.
I would agree with that. And speaking of children, congratulations to Mason Appleton and his partner. They welcomed a baby into the world earlier this week.
Little TJ.
Little TJ, yes. TJ, we don't know what TJ stands for yet. Do you know? Did you figure it out yet, Ezzy?
No, I do not know what it stands for. Tommy John? I have no idea.
Thomas John often would be a TJ sort of acronym, but nonetheless, congratulations to them on the new addition to the family. We'll have a new addition to the show after these commercial messages. Scott Billeck joins us for more on the Winnipeg Jets. Drew Mindell, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg with you on this Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whitened my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
It's all over, folks, and the run has come to an end.
You'll be so far away.
A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in over 30 years.
And the Cup will stay south of the border.
Maybe it's time we try something different. This playoff season, let's cheer with the fans we've always cheered against. Team up for the Cup at Boston Pizza.
Hey Winnipeg, Wendell Clark here. I'm coming out there May 28th for the Rady JCC dinner. Myself, Dougie Gilmore, Grant Fuhr. Some good storytelling about Winnipeg beating us up when we used to come there. See you there.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Bottom of hour number one. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. Somebody wake Billeck up. Who's in charge of setting?
I just texted
alarm?
Scotty. I said, "Wakey, wakey, Scotty." So hopefully he's up.
Get him awake. You know, that's okay. We'll be glad to welcome him whenever he's able to join us here.
I hope Scott didn't have a nightmare about when he was covering COVID.
That would be bad. I think all of us would. That would be a nightmare for all of us. Let me get, we'll bring Scotty on them in a minute. Late last night, early this morning, 1:30, the Dallas Stars eliminated the Colorado Avalanche. Matt Duchene scoring in double overtime. Sweet revenge. Puck don't lie after the other goal.
I'll tell you what lies. What the hell is goalie interference?
Well, let me ask you. That was where it's going to go. The Stars score in
horrible call.
The Stars score in the first overtime. They think they win the series. It gets called off immediately on the ice because of goaltender interference.
Ezzy's boy Mason Marchment gets the game, the GWG.
Yeah,
his reaction tells you everything, Drew.
Yeah,
he was like, "How is that goalie interference?" And I don't know if you guys heard Paul Bissonnette's comments.
I saw. Yeah, I did.
I know the NHL's not going to like that, but honestly, to Drew's point, what he tweeted a couple days ago, does anybody know what goalie interference even is anymore?
I just don't know what Matt Duchene is supposed to do in that play. I mean, he's
literally nothing. He's outside the paint. Georgiev basically gets with him, and then Makar knocks him into him.
Yeah,
and he's still and the funniest part is he's still outside the crease.
That's right. So, he never actually got into the crease. None of it made any sense. Speaking of somebody who usually, hopefully, makes sense, Scott Billeck joins us on the show now. No pressure, no inane ramblings from you. You got to make sense now. You think you can? Are you up for the challenge?
I guess so. I don't often make a lot of sense.
I'm just wondering if Scotty goes to sleep with that Red Sox hat or if he takes it off and then puts it on in the morning.
I usually have one of those like sleep toques or whatever, and it also has the Red Sox on it. So
a sleep cap. That's nice. That's a good look.
Right,
You don't see those very often anymore. Is that a giant fan next to you?
That is a big fan. It's not a big fan. It's a desk fan, but it is next to me. Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear it?
No, I can't hear it. I'm curious about the central air situation though.
I have it. Yeah.
Okay. Just need a fan.
I always have a fan on. Yeah. I run hot all the time. So
Scotty's got lots of fans. He's got fans all over the world.
That's right. Yeah.
Big time. That's good. Different kinds
I literally, if you guys really want to know, I just stepped out of the shower, so I'm a little warm.
Ah, okay. So did the shower? Okay, that's we don't need to go any further down the shower.
Hey, I mean, you guys
shampoo, Scotty, shampoo or conditioner?
No, just shampoo. I don't know. I don't do conditioner. My hair is too short right now for conditioner. There's no point.
That's my excuse also. Yeah. Scotty, anyways, I don't know if it's called a Billeck bomb or what it's called earlier this week.
Whatever the fans call it, man. I think it's a Billeck bomb, but yeah, I don't know if it's a bomb. Yeah.
Billeck breaking news. The BBN network. You reported about Brendan Dillon, unlikely to come back to Winnipeg. But at least the tea leaves are pointing that way. From the Jets' perspective, given everything that they have in terms of a salary cap situation, in terms of more depth on the left side, in terms of a younger Dylan Samberg maybe ready to step into an elevated role. Are you surprised that this seems to be the way it's shaping up?
Yes and no. I think at the start you wonder, okay, so this team builds itself or prides itself on having guys that want to be here. And having guys with tremendous character, and Brendan Dillon fits that bill, right? But I think you have to also look at the fact that he's 33. What does a long-term extension look like for him? Is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? And are you willing to kind of give that guy that? And then on the back end of that, like, who does it block, right? Because at some point this team has to realize, and I think they've started to at least somewhat, but the performances from guys like Brad Lambert and Chibrikov this year in that one game should offer this team some hope that they can go the direction that a lot of teams are. Look at Dallas right now with Wyatt Johnson, Logan Stankoven, a couple guys on ELCs that allow this team to spend their money elsewhere, right? And so Brendan Dillon's making $3.9 million. It's not a ton, right? And I'm not even sure he would get a raise. I don't even think it's about money for Brendan Dillon. And I think that's why, I say it's unlikely, but from what I've been told from his camp, it's like, there's still hope, right? But you also have to wonder about, a guy like Dylan DeMello. Are they going to re-sign him? He made, I think it was 3.5, maybe 4 even. I don't have it in front of me, but regardless, if you're going to give him a contract extension, he's 2 years younger.
He was 3 even.
He was 3 even, right? Okay, so if you're going to get him a contract extension, he wants to stay here. He probably deserves a little bit more money than that, maybe 4 a year. Simply because he's a couple years younger, you're asking him to play on the top pairing, so you've made him into a top pairing defenseman in the NHL. But my whole thing is, if you sign Brendan or Dylan DeMello right now, it's sort of a two-way street with him. You give him, he's going to be there with Josh Morrissey for at least another year. I don't think Elias Salmonson's coming from Sweden and stepping right into the NHL. My guess is he gets at least a year in the AHL. So then you cover that off at least for another year before that happens. And then Dylan DeMello would be a perfect guy that can work up and down the lineup somewhere. His defensive abilities are really good. And he's only 31. So I think that if you're going to, from the business standpoint of this, if you're going to sign one of those two, the guy that makes the most sense, and I like Brendan Dillon a lot, great character, really good guy. But I think when it comes to business, Dylan DeMello makes the most business sense, right? And because he can do two things for you, and Brendan Dillon's just not a top pairing defenseman, and Dylan DeMello can play on the right side. And so on a team that craves more right shot defensemen, and this is the thing, Nate Schmidt's going to be probably gone in next year. He'll be out of here because his contract, and who knows if the Jets are even thinking of buying him out. Neil Pionk's got one more year left.
They're both UFA at season's end.
At next season's, yeah.
After 24,
right.
25.
Yeah, exactly. And so you're losing actually two guys then that play on your right side there.
Right.
And so having Dillon DeMello allows you to keep a guy there. And then the hope, I would imagine, is that Elias Salmonson comes in and at least starts on the second pairing. And then at some point comes around and he becomes your first pairing guy along with and then we'll see what they do with the free agents. This is the thing, right? Like Brett Pesce's on the market, Brady Shea's on the market, Brandon Montour's on the market. Montour's a right-handed shot that can play the right side. Pesce's played the right side. Do they want to take a stab at a guy like Jacob Slavin next summer? I don't know, right? Like there's players that you can get. We all know that not everybody wants to come to Winnipeg. But that said, I mean, I think this is a
Donnie
team
Gaudreau
that
gives everybody some faith. Is all the small market teams, he gives them some faith.
Yeah, and I just think that from a business standpoint, I can understand why they wouldn't go back with Brendan Dillon. And I think it's unfortunate for the team because I think he was one of the best guys in the playoffs. Like I think that's one of those guys that can elevate his game at that time of year. And you lose a lot of size and physicality. And then off the ice, I mean, at least for us in the media, you lose a guy who's like I've gone to umpteen times for insight, right? And this guy's got it all. He's been on a bunch of different teams. He's played in the Stanley Cup final. There's a lot of stuff. So that's a loss for the media. But for the team, I think it's a loss because of what he brings on the ice every night. It is what it is. But I can understand why he's frustrated, and I can understand why the Jets might be looking to go somewhere else.
Scotty, just continuing with the defenseman, because I'm sure either Dave or Drew are going to ask you about Nick Ehlers, because Nick Ehlers is a hot button topic here in Winnipeg these days. But you mentioned Neil Pionk, you mentioned Dillon DeMello, and I'm not sure if you caught any of the early part of the show, probably not because you were in the shower. But we were talking about DeMello. I use Nick Jensen on Washington as a comparable.
Yeah.
He signed a contract making around $4 million a year. I'm not saying that he's the best comparable out there. I'm just saying Jensen is 33, so he's 2 years older than DeMello, but he's more of a defensive defenseman. Similar numbers, similar number of career games played, right? So I think $4 million when you mention that, I think that's right around where he's going to be. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Who knows?
Yeah.
But so I think we all agree that DeMello is going to be re-signed. When you talk about Pionk and Schmidt, though, in an ideal world, I mean, I'm not saying what you think Chevy will do, but if you were the general manager of the Jets, do you try to move Neil Pionk? Do you possibly buy him out? Drew and I got into a friendly debate about that. Like, I like
There's nothing friendly about it.
No, it wasn't friendly. Drew actually punched me in the face after. But no, like, do you see Chevy, or if you were GM, would you look at moving Pionk? And also, as part of that question, what's his trade value? Like, as far as I'm concerned, you have to improve on the right side. And you can't run it back on the right side. I'm with you. I think Brendan Dillon's going to end up signing with another team. I just think it's time for Ville Heinola to play on the left side for the Jets. I think it's time for Dylan Sandberg to be the second pairing defenseman for the Jets. So what if you're the GM, what are you looking to do? Put it that way with Schmidt and Pionk there on the right side and tying that into improving the right side.
I mean, in an ideal world, I think you find a way out with both of them this summer. That's an ideal world, right? Like, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. But if you're asking me ideally what I would do, I mean, I think you would probably buy out Nate Schmidt, take the hit, and then try and find Neil Pionk another home. But what do I think they're going to do? I mean, I don't think they're going to be trading Neil Pionk. I do think that.
Well, hang on. Is that because there's not a market for Neil Pionk, or because they truly think they have something still there in Neil Pionk?
I think you can find a market for Neil Pionk, right? Like I certainly do. I don't know if you can find a $6 million market for Neil Pionk, and then that sort of thing, right? Like, I mean, so we know this team doesn't like to buy guys out, right? I mean, they bought Blake Wheeler out begrudgingly, and it's probably one of the best moves that they've made in 13 years or 14 years here, right? Like, I mean,
they've only bought out 3 guys in 13 years: Steve Mason, and Mark Stewart.
Right? Yeah. But I mean, for we're talking. I don't even know how much Mark Stewart was making at the time, and Steve Mason, I don't think was making that much either. I mean, Blake Wheeler kind of hit them.
I think Steve Mason was actually paying the Jets to play for them.
I mean, we so quickly forget how Steve Mason was coming in as the savior after Connor Hellebuck didn't have the best year the year before. But anyways, yeah, I mean, I don't. It's so hard to speculate on these things because this team is so loyal, and so I think there is I think there would be a market for Neil Pionk. What are you getting in return for him? Not a whole lot, right? Like I don't think you're getting anything really, and you'll get a mid-round draft pick,
prospect maybe.
Because what you're essentially trying to do is dump salary cap space, right? Like that's what you're doing, and that's the same thing with Nate Schmidt, and which is why I think, I mean, unless they could convince like a Chicago or somebody like that to kind of take him for a year and have that guy, veteran guy or whatever. But with like a guy like Nate Schmidt or Neil Pionk, right? Like, I mean, you're basically looking for a salary dump, and every team's going to know that. And so the prices aren't going to be right. Nobody's what does Elliot Friedman say? Nobody's throwing guys life jackets or whatever. They're throwing them anchors, right? So like, I just don't think there's. I mean, if there's a market, you're just basically giving Neil Pionk away. You're Marc-Andre Fleurying him. Right, like that's what you're doing. If you're, you were the Vegas Golden Knights and they did, or what's his name, Pacioretty, right? Like that's what you're doing with those guys. Do I think they do it though? No, like I don't think they get rid of Neil Pionk. One, because he plays the right side, and this is a team that just doesn't have enough right side guys, right? Mm-hmm. And so if Sal Monson's not going to play it this year, and let's say you whiff on free agency, yeah, I mean, you need somebody that can play the right side. And we watched all year, like they don't want Sandberg playing the right side. They don't want Logan Stanley playing the right side. So, I mean, other than that, you're going to be forcing a round peg through a square hole, and it's just not going to work. And so, yeah, I mean, I just don't see that happening. I could see them doing something with Nate Schmidt, though, whether it's, paying and somebody to get him, because getting rid of $5.9 million really does help in the open market, right? And again, going back to the whole, trying to get your lineup to have vets and be able to spend money in the open market and also have skill in your lineup that's getting paid very little. You can bring a guy like Villiers in, you can bring, whatever. I don't know what they're doing with Capobianco. Is he going to play? He seems like, to me, I know Dave watches him a lot, but he seems like he's one of these really good guys in the AHL that just isn't a really good guy in the NHL, right? Like he's a Nick Patan or he's whatever. I'm not saying that, he's not skilled and all that. I'm just not sure that, being the AHL defenseman of the year always translates into being a solid NHL defenseman. We saw that with Nick
Sammy Niku is going to join us next to talk about that exact thing.
Right, exactly, right. So yeah. So yeah, I don't have a great answer for what they do. Ideally, I think you get rid of both of them this summer. I say get rid of them. I think you find new homes for them, or buy Nate Schmidt out, and then try and figure it out. But you also have to have guys that can play, and both those guys play the right side. So yeah, I mean that's.
I don't think it's a bad answer, Scotty. I think I agree with you. I
didn't say it was a bad answer. I just didn't know if it was a good answer.
No, well, sure, yeah, fair enough. I thought it was a good answer. Let me put it that way, Scotty.
I appreciate that.
I think it's going to be hard to move both of those guys. And Dave, you can get in here with your question, but I think the comment I was going to put up from, I know we usually don't put up comments during interviews, but this comment from Partisan Paul, I would rather have Nate Schmidt as my third pair defenseman than Neil Pionk.
I don't disagree with him either.
Well, see, and I'll say this. I mean, Nate Schmidt played his best hockey this season with Dillon Sandberg, and vice versa. I would agree. I would suggest they had that stat for a long time that they hadn't allowed a 5-on-5 goal. Rick Bowness and the coaching staff was able to use that pairing very well together.
Yep.
Right. And so I think that's something that you could go for with. I think what bothers you about both of them though is that they're making $6 million, and you're sort of, for lack of a better term, trying to shelter both of them. And so I think one needs to probably go. and I don't know which one that is. I mean, I think you could probably, like I said, you could probably trade Neil Pionk. but I don't think you can do that with Nate Schmidt. I mean, if you trade Nate Schmidt, you're getting rid of something, right?
And also, Dillon, you're going to lose a really good locker room guy in Dillon. Don't you want to have Nate Schmidt there? I mean, he's one of the most popular guys on the team. I realize some people don't put a lot of stock into that, so we'll see. But I do think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do with Schmidt and Pionk, because that right side's got to get better, right, Dave?
Yeah.
It does indeed. But you know what, Scotty? I'm going to move away from what's happening on the ice, and I'm going to go to your column today in the Winnipeg Sun, the case for Scott Arniel as Jets head coach from those who know him best. So maybe share with the audience what some former and current NHL coaches had to say about the Jets associate coach and why they think he could be a good fit. Because I got to tell you, like just my reading of this is he is getting a little unfairly tarnished right now by a lot of folks, because he's, almost because familiarity breeds contempt. And that seems to be the case right now with Scott Arniel.
Yeah. I had a really good chat with Alan Vigneault yesterday. He had just gotten off the golf course, and I think somewhere down in South Florida. And so very nice for him, obviously. First thing
someone's doing well.
First thing he says to me, though, he's like, "I hate this effing game," right? He's just like, it's just typical Alan Vigneault. The guy's hilarious. And he's really good to deal with. But he handpicked Scott Arniel as his associate coach with the Rangers, and it's actually kind of funny. His first choice actually would have been Rick Bowness, but Rick Bowness, once they got let go in Vancouver, Rick took a job immediately with Lightning, and so Rick wasn't. And the reason why it was Rick Bowness, just for people who didn't know or haven't read it, Alan Vigneault got his NHL coaching start with Rick Bowness on the bench with the expansion Ottawa Senators back in the early 90s. Like that's where that sort of the genesis, I suppose, of that. So Alan talks and says very highly of those two guys. But he spoke really highly of Scott Arniel. And it depends. I mean, yeah, I get this. I mean, I wrote it. This is about a divisive topic, is opening Portage Main to pedestrians, right? Like, like, is Scott Arniel the guy or is he not the guy? To me, honestly, I mean, like, this is reporting. Like, I literally talked to guys, and we had some backfill stuff from last year when Laviolette was here, and you expect these guys to say good things, right? I mean, that's what it is. But you also try and listen to see. What does Scott Arniel change, right? I mean, this is a guy, and one of the things that Vigneault pointed out is, this is a guy that's run everything on a bench, right? He's run PK, he's run the power play, he's done special teams, he's obviously been a head coach. And one thing he said about being a head coach, and if you actually look at that, so like this is the thing, people look at that number in Columbus and the fact that he only coached 123 games and he was canned midway through his second season there. For the analytics folks, that Arniel had that team running pretty good. It wasn't pretty good, but it was above 50% possession, above 50% expected goals. And when he left, all those numbers dropped, right? Mm-hmm. And their problem there was goaltending. Steve Mason, as we talked about earlier in the show, was not good there. He wasn't good. It didn't work out.
Scotty, aside from Rick Nash, who did they have there? Like Vaclav Prospal?
I know. Yeah. So they didn't have a lot of guys that could score, but they were still a possession team, right? They were still on the other side of that. But their goaltending that season at 5-on-5 at least was like 28th or 29th in the league. And back then there was only 30 teams in the league. So basically bottom of the barrel, right? And that's the one thing Alan Vigneault said to me. And I think he can say this, that he doesn't have a job right now. I don't believe he's looking to get another job in the NHL. But the one thing he said to me is like, I talk to Arniel every day. He's like, man, you can't win with that goaltending. And it's true. We know what bad goaltending looks like and what you can't win with here. And
Jay Woodcroft says hi.
Well, that's exactly it, right?
Is he on your second screen there, Drew?
Yeah, he's over here listening to the show.
Right. Yeah, and so you see these guys. You have, everything has to be taken with context, right? You need to understand why. And so the other thing too is, and Vigneault said best, is that a lot of guys, especially assistants, right? Like, you don't always stick around in the league very long, right? If you're not keeping up with the game and you're not sort of figuring, you're not figuring out what, and so Arniel has basically done something. He's changed the stuff that he does, right? I know we saw the Commodore stuff. I think there was a note from Voracek at some point. Maybe
Commie's not a fan of Arniel, but at the end of the day, who cares?
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, right? I mean, so you have to take those things with a grain of salt too. Every head coach in this league has 5 or 6 guys probably that they've coached that just don't like the guy, right? He didn't treat him right, or is perceived didn't play him when he should have played him, whatever, right? I mean, there's always going to be those. Not every guy, obviously, speaks out about it, but that's just a personality thing, right? I mean, we've heard all the guys come out against, a guy like Mike Babcock or Mike Keenan or guys like that, and obviously Babcock has done some bad things, and that's why he's not in the league. But there's also the same number of guys out there that would praise a guy like Mike Babcock, and they just didn't have those experiences. The point of which I'm trying to say is, like, it's always an experience-based thing with head coaches, and a lot of them don't always have. Not every player has a good experience with a particular head coach, and so it is what it is. And I think at the end of the day, I mean. Do I think Scott Arniel is the guy that they should go with? I'm not entirely sold. Only for the fact that, like, this is my opinion, only for the fact that there's a lot of talent right now in the open market. Like, I can't remember the last time the free agent head coaching market was this flush with talent. We know that Craig Berube is obviously gone now, but there's still guys like McClellan and Keefe and Woodcroft, as you said, too. And even Gerard Gallant's in there. He's an interesting one because that guy can't seem to hold the job for more than 3 years. But when he does hold the job, his teams play really well, right? And there's other guys like, I mean, I love the idea of a David Carl only because, there's a guy that probably has no issue, promoting youth and making youth a priority. And when you look around the NHL and you see all these teams that are trying to integrate youth because, people suggest now that the peak years of your career now are younger than they used to be and all that. So you want to get these guys in to sort of take advantage of that. So I like that idea. But can you pull a guy from a national championship winning college program where he probably has free reign to basically do whatever he wants? I don't know, but I just think I mean, as long as the Jets are doing their due diligence here, and it seems like they are. It seems like they've cast a wide net on this. If they're doing it that way, then that's fine. But I think what Vigneault and what Laviolette and what Lindy Ruff have said, and the guys that I quoted in the story, they see a guy that's fit to have a second chance in the league. And that, I guess at the end of the day, I mean, those guys know him better than any of us, right? I mean, those guys have seen him work behind benches. They've seen, and all those guys, apart from Lindy Ruff, those guys have seen him since the Columbus days, right? So they know what he's changed. They know, and we saw it with the Jets. I mean, I guess my one concern, if I was, Winnipeg and doing that, is, you've had a guy for the last 2 years be sort of the good cop, for lack of a better term. Now you're asking him to go in the room and basically be the bad cop, or at least, he has to be listened to as somebody that's not sort of your, I don't want to call him your confidant or anything like that, but like, we know that assistant coaches often play that good cop role where, to the bad cop with the head coach guy. And so, but one of the things, again, that those guys said is that relationships and player relationships are a big deal. Well, if that's changed since Columbus, I think I've seen that at least. You've seen, and you listen to guys like Brennan Dillon or Adam Lowry talk about, Arniel, and it's, there's like those guys who want to play for them. I think we saw that when Bonus was out too. The 10-5-2 record, I think it is, especially the 9-2-2 one.
Yeah.
When Bonus was out for a while there with his wife in the hospital and just on the mend. Alan Vigneault. So I asked Vigneault about that, and he said, I mean, it's impressive because it's different when your head coach isn't there. It doesn't happen very often. But some guys, like the standard still has to be upheld, even if the head coach isn't there, and that's the job of whoever is put in charge as the interim guy at that point. And so he said, Arniel did a really good job at that. So yeah, I mean, it's just a story. I think somebody texted or quote tweeted me and saying, "Oh, just another puff piece about Arniel." I'm like, this is just reporting. Like it's not a puff.
How dare you do that?
That was not a puff. How is that a puff piece? That was a
people-
great article.
You can't listen to what people online say.
Yeah.
Leave my Scotty alone.
There you go. So yeah. Anyways, I appreciate the insight from Vino, because these are guys that really know who he is, and obviously they would like to see him get him a job. Vino told he's biased, like he gets that, but at the same time, objectively speaking, he's seen growth in Scott Arniel over the last X number of years, and so I mean, take it for what you want, but I mean, these are guys that have worked with him, been on the bench with him, been in the trenches, so to speak. So yeah,
we're biased too. We want Ezzy to get a job as well, but nonetheless, Scotty, let me ask you this one. I mean, the other big
craving for Viva Puffs right now after talking about a puff piece.
The other big player piece this offseason seems to be Nikolai Ehlers and his future and his status the year away from free agency. The difference between him, of course, and Schmidt and Pionk is that he's still, at least from our understanding and our expectation, is he's a desirable piece for a lot of the other teams in the league. How do you see the Nikolai Ehlers scenario playing itself out over the course of this summer? I mean, he's the guy who should theoretically bring you back a piece on the right side that you so desperately need.
Yeah.
But the Jets so rarely at the same time make, player for player, quote unquote, hockey trades as opposed to when they, their hand is totally forced to do so.
Well, he also could be the guy that unlocks the ability to bring in somebody on the right side, right?
Right.
So, I mean, if you believe that Brad Lambert's ready to play in the NHL next year, Brad Lambert's playing in the top 6, right? I mean, that's where this is the whole Cole Perfetti argument. But Brad Lambert, in my opinion, plays on would basically replace Nikolai Ehlers. And what ends up happening there is that you free up basically $5 million, right? And Lambert's on an ELC right now.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's got some bonuses worked into there, but whatever.
The Jets will gladly pay those if he achieves them.
Well, exactly, right. And so what effectively you do is you get rid of $6 million, you add $1 million, and now you got $5 million to work with. And so I can see why it's that would be something that you'd want to do. I think if you're also thinking about you're shaking up the core, so to speak, he's probably the easiest one to trade, right? Like, I mean, you could try and trade Kyle Connor, but who's going to score the goals then? And I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, you just re-signed Mark Scheifele. Gabe Vilardi is your guy, especially if he can be healthy. I mean, I thought Gabe Vilardi could have been a 40-goal scorer this year. If he didn't only play, I think it was only 58 games. They ended up playing maybe 62, 58. I think it was 58. Regardless. And so then your second line is who knows right now, right? I mean, I don't know. I assume that they're trying to re-sign Sean Monahan. That's what I've heard. But at the same time, do they look at a guy like Matt Duchene? Right? I mean, I'm curious about that too.
Now you're talking.
Well, it's just interesting, right? Just because he scored the overtime winner last night, and was sort of maybe robbed, at least of.
I was going to say, I'm pretty sure he got 2 points in overtime.
Yeah, I was going to say. So
it's hard to do.
Yeah, it is. So I don't know. I guess it depends on what they're doing with that second line center position too. But I think Ehlers is the guy that probably gets you back into the first round, if that's what the Jets want. And I mean, you start recouping some of the picks that you've spent now. I mean, the first rounder that you spent on Sean Monahan. And so I'm not sure that you're going to get a top 4 team man for Nikolai Ehlers, and simply for the fact that Nikolai Ehlers has 1 year left on his contract, right? And so you're basically shipping off a top 4 deep. So if you can find another team that has a 1-year guy left,
right?
That I don't know. Does Carolina's got a great defense, but they have trouble scoring. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers has trouble scoring in the playoffs, but when he's running, like, he can score 25 goals a year. Would they entertain a deal for, I don't know, one of those guys on the line? I just don't think they're trading Jacob Slavin, right? I don't. I mean, to me, Jacob Slavin's a top 3 defenseman in the NHL. And so I don't know. You'd have to look at the teams. Like, I mean, I haven't done it yet. I'll do it next week, trying to look at, what's out there that looks realistic, right? But I think at the end of the day, Nikolai Ehlers is probably just going to get some picks in return. That's where my gut goes with that. It recoups some of the picks that you've lost. But on the flip side, again, and people have to look at it in a certain way, it opens up money. Now that money only matters if you actually are able to use it on July 1st and beyond. But it gives you options. It allows you to maybe overspend on a Montour or on whoever, right? Brady Shea, whatever. Some of the guys that are heading to the market this year. And so, yeah, I see that. And it allows you some flexibility with the cap because this is what this team needs. And,
let me ask you this. If Ottawa comes calling and says Ehlers for Chychrun.
Yeah, I mean, you probably do it, right? I mean, I think you probably do it because it replaces some of the size. Here's the thing with Chychrun, though. He doesn't really play big, right? He has got size.
He's not known as being physical.
But he's not being a physical guy. And that's why I'm not as bullish as some people are on Jacob Chychrun, because what does this team probably need on the back end more? It's probably size, right? Like they need guys. At the same time, if he's the Brendan Dillon replacement at this point, then yeah, I mean, of course. I mean, he's a left shot defenseman. Yeah, I mean, I think you would do that and then see how it goes. I mean, it'll be Jacob Chychrun in a contract here, I believe, next season.
Yes, they'd both be in contract years.
Right,
You'd be saving a little bit of money. You'd be saving about $1 million in the difference.
So it makes sense. Like, I mean, that's probably like the easiest trade in terms of like you can get a top 4 defenseman. Because, and that's the one thing that I was going to say, like there might be deals like that out there, guys that are on expiring deals next season that you could get in the summer, see how it goes, or if you really like a guy and get him, you can extend him right away, whatever you want to do, right? So I think there's obviously opportunity to make something work. Ehlers has 10
so does Chychrun.
They both have 10-team no trade lists.
And what do you want to bet? Winnipeg and Ottawa are on your list.
And that's the thing. But you can also, again, we've seen that before.
Of course.
And the one thing for Chychrun, right? If Chychrun's not interested in staying here, well, he's going to get top 4 minutes here and can have a career year here, right? Like if that's what he really wants to do. If you want, a lot of guys are very motivated in that final year of their contract, especially when they're about to hit UFA status and looking to make bank somewhere. Most of the time, it's just getting guys here, right? And if you get a guy here, you probably find out that he starts to like it here, yada yada yada, and then whatever, and then you kind of strip away those the cliches about Winnipeg and all the things that you hear. So yeah, I mean, I think that's at the end of the day, that's sort of. But I think you're probably, unless you find a good situation like that where you can get, a guy that has a year left for another guy that years left, and that's how you make the trade. I would suggest that you're probably just going to get some picks, maybe a prospect if you can find one. Again, I haven't looked into it too much. I was on holidays last week, but yeah, I plan on exactly. I plan on looking into it to see what might work, and but yeah, I mean, I think. At the end of the day, you're trying to, if you can't get a guy like Chychrun or somebody, reasonable facsimile, as some people would say, you probably try and free up some money. And the way that you do that is get back in the first round, which you could probably do with Ehlers and go from there.
Scott Billeck covers the Winnipeg Jets for the Winnipeg Sun. He's a good friend of this show. Scotty, even though you were just on holidays, we'll let you get back to your long weekend, and we'll look forward to seeing more of your work in the Winnipeg Sun and online, of course, at winnipegsun.com. Thanks, buddy. We appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime, guys.
Cheers, Scotty B.
There he goes. Have a great weekend, Scotty. Be well.
You guys. Yep.
There he goes, Scotty Billeck, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. When we come back, more on the Jets, coaching, Ehlers, much more, whatever else comes to our mind. Marty Biron coming up in about 25 minutes' time. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. It's a Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
It's all over, folks, and the run has come to an end.
You've been so far away.
A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in over 30 years.
And the Cup will stay south of the border.
Maybe it's time we try something different. This playoff season, let's cheer with the fans we've always cheered against. Team up for the Cup at Boston Pizza.
Hey Winnipeg, Wendell Clark here. I'm coming out there May 28th for the Rady JCC dinner. Myself, Dougie Gilmore, Grant Fuhr. Some good storytelling about Winnipeg beating us up when we used to come there. See you there.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake. After a great game or great deal, it shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Saturday morning. Welcome back to the Oversharing Hockey Show. Mr. Ginsburg specializing in that based on his comment in our private chat that I
you don't have to repeat that
on air. I will not bring it up on air. I call it the oversharing, and that's more than enough. People can figure it out if they want at that point in time.
There's a reason why it's called the private chat, right, Dave?
Yeah. Nobody needs to know what goes on in that private chat. It's a traumatic situation there for all involved. Nice to see everybody again Saturday morning, hour number 2. A little bit later than we normally would start hour number 2, but that's because we went long with Scotty B like we always like to do. Great insight into the Winnipeg Jets. We remind everybody that if you haven't already done so, be sure to smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast. Tons of great content online. In case you missed any of Dave's season-ending Manitoba Moose roundtable show from earlier this week, there's some great interviews there, so check that out on the YouTube channel. And of course, in the podcast edition of the show, Marty Biron going to join us in about 20 minutes time.
I noticed, Dave, sorry to interrupt you, Drew. I noticed that Finker was popping in and out of the roundtable show. I'm not sure if nature was calling Dave or what was going on there.
The problem for Daniel is he set up a great background. He was outside on the patio. There's only one problem. It started to rain. So
well, that's what it was. Okay.
So it's not great with technology. I think at one other point, he did have to power up his computer, so he had to plug in. But it was funny because both him and Austin kept having had popped them out of the chat and then in the chat and out of the chat.
It's like Fink had to leave the show when he was electrocuted.
Yes, we're going to take a brief time out while Daniel Fink's body stops smoking after having been hit by lightning while on the balcony outside. Yes, it hasn't, I was just thinking it hasn't really rained enough in Winnipeg the last couple of days. Hopefully we can get a little more rain.
What is going on? And that hail was nuts.
Yeah.
And
it's funny because it only hit certain areas. And
it didn't hit us.
But I was driving and all of a sudden I'm like, that's, when you see like I thought it was like soap. I thought someone had been cleaning their car, and I was like, but it almost looked like someone had just poured like a vat of it down Grant, like on one of those little side streets that's right beside it. And I'm like, that's weird. Like that, you think that maybe someone spilled something.
And Drew, the reason why it didn't hit you is because there's an iron dome over your neighborhood, so hail doesn't hit you.
Anyways, the point is, and then all of a sudden I looked, I'm like, oh no, that's actually just hail. But I was busy doing the aforementioned Moose show. I was unaware. I could hear it. I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah, exactly right. No, imagine where my folks, their yard, they said they could have shoveled their yard. Meanwhile, at my house, there was almost nothing. So it just all depends on where you reside. But hopefully nobody.
When you have a 10-acre property, Drew, I mean, you really don't feel anything.
It's true. There might have been a whole part of my property I haven't got to yet.
In the bunker.
That's still covered in hail. Nonetheless, back to the Jets. Earlier this week we heard that they interviewed Craig Berube, and obviously, I think not really too much of a surprise. He ended up in Toronto. Thank you, Dallas. That's very much appreciated.
Breaking news, Dallas, $13.99. That'll get me one beer at Canada Life Center.
Well, good thing there's no reason for you to be there on this long weekend, Ezzy. But thank you, Dallas. That's very generous for the
Dallas,
long weekend beer fun.
Nice.
We appreciate that.
Maybe we'll use that to take Dallas for a beer. That's an idea.
Well, Dave and I were out with Dallas on Monday night. You weren't anywhere to be found. Great night on Monday at the Kenny and Rennie.
I was parenting. I had to be with my kids.
Parenting too. I coached my son's baseball game, and then I booted my way over there.
I brought Sam to Trans-Canada Brewing. He was doing keg stands.
That's why he's not feeling so great today.
Yeah. He's feeling better now, but I did not bring him there. I brought him home first, and then I went there. But yeah, great night on Monday at the Kenny and Rennie season wind-up party. Nice to see so many new faces, so many familiar faces.
Bardo was there.
Yeah, it's great to see all.
He got a Paulie, not there.
Yeah, Gabriel Vivaldi, had a great chat with her.
Gabriel Vivaldi, that's amazing.
Yeah, well, Ezzy, if you'd been there, you would have been able to meet all these people.
Well, yeah, and I look, Spency's booing me in the chat. I have no excuses. I mean, what can I say, guys? I'm a responsible dad.
Well, I don't know about that, but
anyways, Drew's irresponsible.
Fair enough. Anyways, what I was saying is the Jets, interviewed Craig Berube earlier this week. They're still doing some more interviews, is what we've heard. Dean Evison has apparently been interviewed by the team. There's
Sheldon Keefe as well. I thought too, right?
As well.
Was it
Todd
Keefe?
McClellan, Sheldon Keefe? The talk that they're waiting to interview.
Have they
Todd
Nelson?
Keefe?
I didn't hear that they talked to Sheldon.
Dave, they're going to have a great coaching staff with all these guys behind the bench.
So the Jets are going through their due diligence when it comes to the coaching hire, which is, I think, what a lot of people wanted. Not to say that it's not going to be Scott Arniel ultimately getting the job. We just don't know yet. The Jets aren't. They are going through a litany of interviews, which is important. I think it's not a coronation. It's not an immediate appointment. He's going to have to win the interview as well, Arniel, just like all these other guys do, and the Jets are doing that, taking that time and taking that effort, because there's no real rush. There's no urgency, I would say, in making a decision when it comes to the head coach and things of that nature. Todd Nelson, to me, is the one that's sort of particularly interesting. And Dave, you can probably speak to him a little bit more given your coverage of the AHL. He's currently coaching in the playoffs still, at the AHL level. But so it seems like the Jets really do want to speak with him if they're willing to wait this long until his season wraps up.
It'll be a while, though.
Say that again.
Well, it could be a while because he's
right.
The Hershey Bears are taking on the Hartford Wolfpack in the Atlantic Division Finals right now, and so, but Hershey won the AHL championship, the Calder Cup last year, so they're looking like they'll probably able to go. Dylan McElrath, Ezzy, your boy from Winnipeg.
Yep.
Alex Limoges, former Manitoba Moose, he's on that team. I think Mike Scarbosa might still be on that team as well.
Wow. Dave wins the obscure Jet mention of the day with Mike Scarbosa.
There you go.
I mean, unless you're pulling out Spencer Mahachik, I don't know how you're topping that.
I won't try today, but the point is that Todd Nelson is, he's done a lot of, he's won with the Grand Rapids Griffins. He won a Calder Cup in 16-17. And of course, like I said, he won last year. So he's a guy who's, he's
coached with the Thrashers before they came over.
Yeah. He's from the Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, drafted by the Penguins. So, I mean, he's a guy who's, spent some time, he didn't play a ton of games in the NHL. I can't remember. I think he only played like 3 games or something like that. But
3 games is exactly right. But he scored in those 3 games. So he's got a great percentage.
But the point is that he got
Dave, you either looked that up on Hockey DB or
no, I wrote about it last week. I wrote about it last week. That's
what I was going to say, because if you just remembered randomly how many career games Todd Nelson played, that would be like Rain Man level.
Yeah, that'd be impressive. No, I wrote about it when they were talking about him as a possible. So I just kind of provided some folks some insight. But I'm just saying that, like I said, as you mentioned it, he got, I think, his first chance in coaching with the Atlanta Thrashers.
Yeah. Coached the Oilers for a couple of years or 1 year. Yeah.
1 year.
He was the head coach for that 46 games with the Oilers where he was the interim.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, and he's won. He's got the 2 Calder Cup championships under his belt. But I just think, are the Jets prepared to wait? Because he is, at least he's probably a month away before you're hearing from him in terms of that opportunity. So we'll see. And again, like I said, it's I don't know how things are going to go in this realm, but if the Jets are prepared to wait and prepared to look, I think what it comes down to is I don't know that there's teams banging down Scott Arniel's door looking to hire him. And again, like I said, like I'm not trying to be a True North like apologist or anything like this. Like I just think this idea that, and I said it to Scott when my, kind of in my question, that the idea of familiarity breeds contempt, as if somehow he doesn't deserve it for a couple of reasons because he's part of the organization. And again, as I pointed out in the chat, yeah, the PK was abysmal last year, but it was also 7th under him the year before. So, I mean, that could be, I mean, he gets credit for being 7th, having the 7th best PK in 22-23. He also has to wear it, the fact that the PK wasn't good under him last year. It's something that has to improve with, relatively speaking, the same personnel. But again, like I said, I don't know. To me, it's just this idea that somehow he can't do the job because he's only been a head coach once or whatever. Like, again, I'm just saying, like, he's got the respect of the players in this organization, right? As he did have that good run 9-2-2 when Rick Bowness went down, to look after Judy during when she had her problems. So again, like I said, I'm not saying that he's the heir apparent and is going to take the Jets to that next level. But to be honest, quite honestly, folks, nobody knows who's going to take anyone to the next level. You can't point to any coach and say whether he's won 3 Stanley Cups or he's never won a Stanley Cup. Like, again, Todd Nelson, I know everybody wants Todd Nelson. Todd Nelson's never won a Stanley Cup.
Sheldon Keefe has never taken an NHL team past the second round, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, with all due respect to, some of the candidates out there, I mean, Gerard Gallant is really the only guy that, has taken his team to the Stanley Cup final multiple times out of the guys we're talking about, right? Jay Woodcroft.
And related to that, and it doesn't sound like the True North has interviewed him.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, like, of all the guys that are possibly out there, you're right, Drew. They have not talked to Gallant. That's a good point. But Dave's right. I mean, look, at the end of the day, guys, whoever the Jets go with as head coach, whether it's Arniel, whether it's Keefe, whether it's Todd Nelson. By the way, I think that Todd Nelson makes a lot of sense, Dave, to bring in as kind of that associate coach under Arniel. Yeah. I think that's something to maybe look at. I'm not saying that's going to happen. As you guys know, I'm not a Jets insider. I'm a Jets outsider.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think Todd Nelson, look, do we know if Brad Lauer is coming back next year? It hasn't been announced yet. So, I mean, the Jets might be replacing Brad Lauer.
Nothing will be announced likely until the next head coach. The next head coach will get to make that decision.
Exactly. For those who don't know, head coaches often will bring in their own assistant. So if the Jets do hire
GM gets one assistant coach behind the bench usually, and then the head coach gets 2 assistant coaches.
So Marty Johnston and Brad Lauer, for those who don't know, are the Jets assistant coaches. And because of the special teams problems, I think they might look at either True North, Chevy might look at bringing in somebody else. All I'm saying is, I think, Dave, you would agree, Todd Nelson could be an assistant coach if he's not the head coach. That's all I'm saying. And going back to Dave's point, whoever the Jets hire, if the Jets don't ultimately win a Stanley Cup or go to the Stanley Cup final, that coach is going to be criticized, because that's the whole thing. This is not Jim Toth said this on yesterday's Jets at lunch, and I agree with him. The Jets aren't even a win now team. They're a win yesterday team. Like, this team has, I think, a 2 or 3 year window, a really good window, maybe 4 years to win a Stanley Cup. While Scheifele, Hellebuck, Connor, and Morrissey, that's the new core 4. Because I think Ehlers is probably not in that core anymore. The Jets core 4 probably has 3 or 4 years in their prime. I think you'd agree with that, right, guys? And so whoever comes in as head coach has to deliver a Stanley Cup in 3 or 4 years. And so that's why I think you're going to go with a veteran coach. I know some people like David Carl, but I imagine if it's not Scott Arniel, you're probably looking at a Todd Nelson or somebody that has a lot of experience with young players, who's got the championship pedigree. You mentioned it, won a Calder Cup. And I'm not saying that, Jay Woodcroft isn't a good coach or Sheldon Keefe isn't a good coach. But Keefe certainly couldn't get the Leafs over that hump. So why would you think he could get the Jets over the hump? Honestly, I think Sheldon Keefe is a good coach. But I mean, look at his track record. I mean, it's, he took a very talented team to the second round once.
Yeah, you make very valid points there, as look, it's not easy to win in this league either. I mean, I think everybody makes it sound like it's so simple, and it's clearly not. You have to have everything align almost perfectly when it comes to roster development and injuries and opponents and just the ups and downs of a season, and it all has to be aligned, to really make it work come playoff time. It clearly didn't confident for the Jets this past one against Colorado. And then look, after Colorado dispatched the Jets, how many people would have thought that Dallas would have got rid of them in 6? And again, talk about alignment. Think about that series. If Val Nichushkin doesn't get put back into the player rehabilitation program,
right?
In the middle of the
probably goes to 7 games. And also Taves missed game 4. We should mention that.
Well, game 4, Dallas. Game 4, Colorado. It's a close series still at that point in time. Colorado comes into game 4. Hours before the game, they lose one of their key forwards and one of their key defensemen. Again, the alignment, everything has to be aligned so perfectly. The chakras have to be right. The stars have to be in the right orbit of the moon or whatever other nonsense you want to believe in. It's not that
all I know
easy.
is that Peter DeBoer is looking pretty good right now.
He's looking like a damn good head coach. You're right.
Two best friends could be going head to head in terms of
DeBoer and Maurice,
former Jets coach Paul Maurice.
It's going to be absolutely. And then who knows what's going to happen tonight with the Oilers and the Canucks.
I hope it's Florida Dallas, because I want Drew to win my hockey pool.
I will win your hockey pool if it's Florida Dallas. You're absolutely right about that, Mr. Ginsburg. I've only lost one player. I've lost the only player I lost in what was it, 13-14 round pool?
12.
Is 12. Okay, yeah. Svechnikov is the only player that I've had bumped so far.
It is interesting though that this would be if Canucks beat the Oilers, all 4 first place teams will get through. That's kind of.
By the way, if the Oilers lose to Vancouver, and it. I
got to tell you, Vancouver. I watched that. I watched that last Vancouver Oilers game. It's pretty. Yeah. Vancouver looks pretty good. I did not expect.
Well, when Elias Peterson is actually playing well, I mean, they look like a dangerous team. Peterson has had a horrible playoffs game 5
when he's not charging guys
by standing still and jumping backwards. Yeah, that was an interesting penalty call. You're right about that.
Speaking of good head coaches, Rick Tocchet looking pretty damn good.
Rick Tockett's looking like a very good head coach. It sounds like the Oilers are going to go with Stu Skinner tonight in net, which to me is probably a bit of anyways, not important if that's the right decision or the wrong decision. What about Ehlers? That's we touch on him briefly. With
He's
Scott
a guy we
Billeck.
haven't talked a lot about over the last 7 years.
Well, I mean, it's true. You're right. I mean, if you're the Jets,
as much as I love Scotty, there's no chance in hell this organization. Drew, you just went through a whole thing about the Jets being in win now mode, or as he did.
He's not getting traded for a draft pick.
No,
I agree. There's not a chance in hell he's getting traded for a draft pick.
He's your best 5-on-5 forward. If you're trading him for a draft, if that happens and the Jets don't replace him, the Jets will not be a playoff team next year.
Ezzy, it's 0% chance. They don't trade a player who's on their roster. Again, the message it sends. You literally told Hellebuck and Scheifele your intention was to win a Stanley Cup, and then you're trading away a guy for picks who are, look, like Wheeler said it. I'm here to win a Stanley Cup now. I'm not thinking about what's going to happen in 3, 4, 5 years. He isn't wrong.
I'm kind of on the Ehlers for Chychrun bandwagon now. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Well, it's one of those trades where, both guys are 1 year away from free agency. It's an opportunity to sell both guys on a new destination for a year, see what you have there. I mean, if you need to mix up, your core, for lack of a better word, I'll use the word core when it comes to both of those guys, respective to Winnipeg and to Ottawa. It's just a relatively easy hockey trade, assuming they'd both be willing to waive their no trade.
Similar to Middlestat for Byron in the sense that you're trading a defenseman for a forward. Obviously, Byron is younger than Chychrun, and Ehlers is older than Middlestat, but kind of that idea, right? The Jets are trading from a position of strength. The Jets have better forward depth than they have defensive depth, right, Dave? So I think, look, Ehlers, Chychrun, who knows if that'll actually happen.
They're both 27,
like
28 years old. I mean, logically, if you just wanted to make a straight 1-for-1,
trade is 1-for-1.
Yeah.
Then that's the 1-for-1 trade that's just glaringly out there.
Is Adam Larson available?
I'm sure you can have him. He's where is he? Seattle? Is he still in Seattle?
Yeah.
Sleepless. I'm sure you can make that trade. I mean, that's the one that just seems like the easiest swap where there's not a lot of complicating factors. Now, I'd be surprised if the Jets do that, just because it's not necessarily how they usually approach trades. When would that's not sort of their style. They usually go for
again, like I don't see Lambert jumping into the NHL and replacing Nikolai Ehlers again, not to be too harsh on Scotty, but I mean that again, The other thing also is, do you want to make the same mistake you did previously when you had a guy who was playing center and playing well at center? And again, if you don't believe me, listen to the head coach, listen to the GM. We had them on the show on Thursday. They both spoke about Lambert's development in his defensive play, not just talking about what he was doing offensively and his attitude. So again, like I said, I really do urge people, and I'll clip it. So if you don't want to go back and watch it, you can watch it on our Twitter or whatever. But the point is that you don't want to make the same mistake. And look, Roslovic's having success with the New York Rangers. But my point is,
he had an assist on the winning goal, right?
Absolutely. But I'm just saying that, you don't want to spend the time developing a guy in one position to only throw him into another one where, again, Lambert's success seems to be by playing in that middle. And so I don't know that I would make that mistake, especially when you can insulate him with Monahan. If Monahan is going to be re-signed, then, and look, I know everybody's saying Logan Stankoven, and I asked Mark Morrison about that. I said, how do you kind of make that push? How do you explain to fans? How do you explain to players in terms of that? So again, don't trust me. Trust the guy who's been in the game for a long time, and he can give you his insight in terms of.
I think there's a good chance. I didn't think I'd say this a year ago, Dave. I think there's a good chance Lambert is going to play more games in the NHL next year than in the AHL. That's all I'll say. I'm not saying he's going to play 82 games. This is just based on what I have seen watching him play twice with the Moose and once with the Jets. You watched all the Moose games. You would know better than I would, but I mean, the guy is really good. He's fast. I think he's ready. He played pro in Finland, right?
Yeah.
I think this guy is ready for the NHL. I really do think Lambert is ready.
Again, like I said, he's a 2022 first rounder. And, the thing about it, the 2020 first rounder in Cole Perfetti who scored 19 goals this year, was still finding himself to be a healthy scratch.
And Dave, we've got the comment up. Sorry, I keep cutting you off, but the bingo bango comment, Lambert needs to fill out. Look, have you watched Wyatt Johnson and Logan Stankoven? Those guys are not 230 pounds.
No.
Right? So you don't have to be 210 pounds or even 200 pounds. Like Lambert, look, he has to learn, how to use his size or lack thereof, I guess, because he's not a big guy, right, Dave?
Nope. Well,
I think Lambert, I don't know. We'll see, but I do think that Lambert, he has been really impressive in his first year with the Moose.
All I can tell you, Ezzy, and I don't know who the right winger would be on that line, but if you keep Ehlers and you put Lambert as your second line center, let me tell you something. That line is going to play with. There's going to be a lot of speed on that line. So if it ends up being, Cole Perfetti might slow it down a little bit, but that'll be. Let me tell you something.
Again, talks about how slow Perfetti is. I don't like.
Well, he's not. Really,
I wouldn't say he's not Brad Lambert. Yeah, but he looks okay to me. Like, it's so funny that people like
compared to you, he's fast.
Oh yeah, well yeah, I can't even skate backwards. So yeah.
Anyways,
okay, Ezzy, you have to go. We're going to bid adieu to you for the remainder of this show, and we're going to welcome to the program instead a straight swap. Ezzy Ginsberg for Marty Biron. The trade is 1-for-1, and let me tell you, we are getting the better end of that trade right there. Marty, good morning. Nice to see you. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Yeah, good morning. I feel pressure now. When you're like the best player in the trade, like there's there's pressure to perform. So I feel like that. Sorry, Ezra. I don't want to say I'm the best player in the trade, but I got to feel confident about it.
We'll say it. We'll say it without a shadow of a doubt that you're the best player in that trade. No question about it. Marty, obviously, we appreciate you joining us this morning. Talk about the playoffs. Talk about the NHL. Let me start you with this one from last night. The overtime winner that wasn't until Dallas ended up winning it in double overtime. What did Matt Duchene do wrong there that necessitated that goal to stay off the board?
He actually didn't do anything wrong. I actually feel that he did a lot of things right. He stopped in the white ice, never even touched the red as the crease and then the blue ice. Got bumped by Cale Makar, then bumped Georgiev in the process. But I thought Matt Duchene did everything right. Now, I've talked to a lot of people over the last few days, especially after the Sam Bennett goal against Boston, where he pushed Charlie Coyle into Jeremy Swayman. That play was challenged by the Boston Bruins. It was upheld as a good goal. And everybody thinks that goal shouldn't have counted. And everybody thinks that the goal last night shouldn't have counted also. But the big thing here is that I remember talking to Dave Jackson. He's a retired referee, but he does rule expertise with ESPN. And he said, look, I would like the call on the ice to be made by the referee in the Bennett Coyle situation, so that the situation room doesn't have or doesn't need 100% certainty to overturn the call, right? Because once you want to overturn a call, you need 100% certainty that it is the wrong call. So last night, what we saw is a referee that what he thought was goaltender interference, so he waved it off right away, which I appreciate a referee making the call on the ice as to what he saw.
Mm-hmm.
But then you go to the situation room and you can freeze frame everything. You can slow it down and you realize that it's not Duchesne that initiated the contact. It was Makar. So I would have liked to have seen that goal, but there's been 6 goaltender interference reviews in the playoffs this year. Only one of them was overturned. So the call on the ice stood for 5 out of the 6. I think it makes a difference.
Marty Biron joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Marty, one more thing I want to talk about that's been, I obviously want to talk about more than just this one thing, but lots that's been talked about lately when it comes to goaltending and play and the playoffs is the reverse vertical horizontal. That has been a big topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Can you maybe explain for our audience what that means, how it pertains to goaltending, and where you fall on that on the ledger regarding that debate as of late?
Well, I'll give you a history lesson. So years and years ago, Francois Ehlers, which was the goalie coach for the Montreal Canadiens starting in like 86 when Patrick Roy, took over in Montreal, and they developed the butterfly, right? And the going down to be able to use the legs to make saves. And some goalies were using it, like Ken Dryden would go down and Tony Esposito would go down. But most goalies in the 80s, 70s, 80s would be stand-up style. So here comes Patrick Roy. They developed the butterfly. I did some working with Francois Ehlers, and I remember in about 2001, 2002, we started working on a technique that was called the VH, the vertical horizontal, which your leg against the post is vertical and your leg away from the post is horizontal on the ice. So it makes me like an L shape, situation. It helped to seal the post because players got smart about wraparounds and plays on the post. So it helped to seal the post. Now you move forward a few years later, Jonathan Quick with the LA Kings has got paddled down on the post on wraparounds, and he's got what they started calling the reverse VH, the reverse vertical horizontal, where the leg on the post is horizontal and the leg away is up in the air. Now, I know people are going to say, okay, that's a lot of goalie, lingo and technical stuff. Yes, but players are so smart now because they do goalie practice. Shooters go and shoot on goalies. They know what the tendencies are. They know what they like to do in certain situations. So it becomes second, instincts that second nature and natural instincts to be able to pick away at those type of situations, those type of technique. We've seen a lot of goalies getting beat short side when they're down on the ice. I actually think that the technique is a really good one. It saves a lot more goals than it allows goals. It's just, when do you use it? When do you put it in play? And I know even Henrik Lundqvist, my former teammate, we worked on these things, right? He's like, there's an epidemic. There's an epidemic. I say, Hank, there's no epidemic. They said the same thing about Patrick Roy going butterfly all the time. They're like, it's easy to beat Patrick Roy. All you got to do is shoot to the top of the net. Well, I'll tell you this. Patrick Roy won 4 Stanley Cup, and it wasn't so easy to beat him when he was down on the ice, right? So I think that it's just a matter of using the skill set the right way. And what we saw on the Rantanen goal on Jake Ottinger last night was actually Ottinger went straight butterfly. And I would argue that a well-executed reverse VH on that play would have kept his shoulders up, sealed to the post, and probably would have made the save. So it's the flavor of the month, maybe, like, to talk about it. And I understand, because people want to understand more about goaltending.
Marty, got to ask you, speaking of goaltending, what's going on in that Canucks and Oilers series? And we saw Artur Silovs here for one game with the Manitoba Moose during the bubble year, and then he went back to Vancouver for the remainder to sit on the the whatever
Taxi Squad.
Taxi
the
Squad, yes.
Squad, that's right. But from your perspective, what he's doing against such a talented Oilers group, is that again, is it what he's doing? Are the Canucks executing really well defensively in front of him, or is it kind of a combination of all of that?
I think there is definitely a combination of both. Until last game, the Canucks averaged 20 shots per game. There's been plenty of games where the Canucks had 12, 15, 16 shots in a game. And I talked about that when Thatcher Demko got hurt at the end of game 1 against Nashville, is that the biggest difference with Thatcher Demko or without Thatcher Demko this season with the Canucks was not so much the amount of goals they gave up, is the amount of goals that they scored. They don't play the same game offensively. They protect Casey DeSmith. They protect Arthur Sheloff. They play better defensively. So I think that there's a big part of that factors in. But Sheloff's is good. Sheloff's has got size. Sheloff's has got great technical instincts. Sheloff's great reaction. There was a play where I think it was game 3. Yeah, Vancouver won game 3. It was in game 3 where the puck was behind him a little bit. He turned around and grabbed the Oilers player's stick with his blocker hand so that he could grab the puck with his glove hand. I'm like, this was so smart. Like, nobody's going to call him for a penalty for holding the stick on that play, but he knew exactly what he was doing. So I think he's been fantastic. And now we play that game, right? Is Thatcher Demko healthy to play? When is he healthy to play? I would not start Thatcher Demko game 6 if Thatcher Demko was healthy to play. But if they go to game 7, then you may have to start thinking about it. If they advance to the conference finals and Thatcher Demko is ready to play, then you have to start him game 1 and you see. But I mean, Arthur Sheloff is a big reason why the Vancouver Canucks are up 3-2 in that series.
You mentioned something there, Marty, about teams playing different in front of goaltenders that they maybe aren't as confident with behind them. With Vancouver playing different when Demko's in net, because Demko can often make big saves versus DeSmith versus Shelov's. I look at the parallels for Colorado here against the Jets after that game 1 where Georgiev was absolutely terrible, but then Colorado seems to have adapted their style for the remainder of that series. Is that really, how difficult or easy is that for teams to do when they don't necessarily have the confidence in their goaltender, but they know that they need to be sort of extra committed to make sure he's not left on an island?
Yeah, there's a lot of factors that play in, and I'm not saying that every team plays so much better defensively when their backup goaltender or their third string goalie is in net. It's just that you have to watch the games, and the numbers have to show that. And the numbers for Vancouver shows that they don't score. They scored 1 less goal per game with DeSmith or Shelov's in net compared to Thatcher Demko this year. Like, that's just over 82 games. That's a large sample of data that you have to be able to say, okay, they definitely play different when Thatcher Demko is not in net. So what happened with Colorado and Winnipeg, I feel that Colorado would have adjusted to say, hey, we don't trust Georgiev all that much. Let's play better defensively. But they kept scoring. They kept beating Connor Hellebuck. They kept scoring 5 or more goals per game. So then it's like, okay, well, let's not worry so much about playing extra careful defensive hockey. We can still score, and let's go out and score. So the situation calls for an adjustment. But sometimes the adjustment is let's score more goals as opposed to play better defensively. But Vancouver has found success playing better defensively in front of Shelov's.
Marty Biron, our guest Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're live talking about goaltending, talking about the playoffs with Marty Biron.
So, Marty, we haven't had you on yet since the Jets series ended, so I can ask you, just from your perspective, a couple of questions. Number one, what did you see from Connor Hellebuck? Because when we did our end-of-season media availability, I was in the Matt Frost Media Center when he started off by saying, you're not going to believe me, but I really liked my game. And I was like, but then he kind of came back and he talked, a little bit more. If you had to listen to the whole thing, if you just listen to that one clip, you're thinking, what's wrong, Connor? Are you okay? But then when you heard his whole thing in its totality, you understood where he was kind of coming from. So what did you see from that? And I know the question I have is Jets fans were desperate to see Laurent Brossoit. Not all Jets fans, but some. But do you think that an organization that has a guy who's going to be signed to a 7-year extension, like his 7-year extension kicks in next year, there was any chance they would have gone to the backup goaltender? in that situation?
No, there was no chance. And look, maybe I'm a little old school to that. And I've talked again to a lot of people, and they're like, "What's with all the goalie changes this year? What's with Boston going Swayman game 1 and Elmar game 2 against the Toronto Maple Leafs? What's with the Edmonton Oilers going to Calvin Pickard? Like, Stuart Skinner's your guy. Keep him going." Like, I had 3 goalies that I backed up for in the playoffs, and I played a total of 0 minutes and many years of backing up Dominic Hasek, Ryan Miller, and Henrik Lundqvist. I played a total of 0 minutes behind those guys. It wasn't how you adjusted. It wasn't how you manage your goaltenders 10, 15, 20 years ago. It is a little bit more how you adjust now. But even Devin Dubnyk, who does great work with the NHL Network TV side in the US, he's like, "Oh, he's tired. You got to give him a break. Oh, Freddie Anderson is tired. You got to give him a break." Like, he mocked it, and I get it. I'm like, I'm mocking it too. Like, what's going on here? It's the playoffs. Play the game, right? So I would never have gone to Laurent Brossoit if, as long as Connor Hellebuck is healthy enough to play, he's playing, and you hope that things work out. He can win 5 in a row. He can win 8 in a row, and winning a series is a possibility with Connor Hellebuck. But the problem that I had with Connor Hellebuck, not only the comments that he made after losing in 5 to Colorado, was more the comments that he made after game 1, when he said, all I have to do is, not give up one more goal than the guy across the ice. I'm like, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to dictate games. You're supposed to. So I think it was a mental approach, right? I think it was almost I'm okay to win 7-6. Well, I don't like saying that. You like to win, but you don't like giving up 6 goals, and you have to make a bigger impact on the series. And look, Connor Hellebuck was just a bit of a fish out of water when it came to Colorado, their speed, their lateral movement. He was never set many goals. He was still moving when the puck was changing direction. He was late on the play. I think that's more what happened in that series. He gave up some bad goals, yeah, but overall, he was maybe a beat behind everything that Colorado was doing.
Do you think that's because he was just trying to sort of anticipate the play rather than react to what was actually happening? I mean, Colorado was playing at such a high level against the Jets, and I don't know that it would have mattered who was in goal given the way that Colorado was playing, given the poor performance that the Jets had. But do you think that Hellebuck sort of, deep down was maybe trying to do too much in that instance?
I'd like to talk to him about it if I would find the time, even next year, the year after, just to understand, because it's the domino effect of, I'm going to play my game, but then all of a sudden you're late on every play and you can't seem to catch anything, right? So now you start second guessing and you start trying to anticipate and cheat on I think they're going to play. And then you end up maybe a little deeper, a little off angle, a little, you're not square, you're not set. Like, there's a lot of dominoes that fall as soon as you start, trying to catch up. I don't know if he felt that way. It really looked that way. And I've been in that situation. You talk about Colorado. I remember going to play Colorado in Denver. And that's when Peter Forsberg and Sakic and all those guys were there. And it was fast, and it was really, really fast in front of me. And I was like, I can't seem to keep up. And now I was trying to cheat, and it looked even worse because I was giving up terrible goals because I was cheating. So I don't know if that's what happened to Hellebuck, but it sure seemed like it.
Marty Biron, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show Saturday morning. Marty, the Oilers, Game 6, must win. Sounds like they're going back to Stuart Skinner over Calvin Pickard. Is that the right decision in your mind?
It's the right decision. I mean, Calvin Pickard did what he had to do. Won Game 4, played extremely well in Game 5. Your guy is Stuart Skinner. Again, I think it was a bold decision from Chris Knobloch to go to Calvin Pickard in Game 4. It worked. You try to, double down. You try to say, okay, let's keep going. And Pickard's a different goaltender than Stuart Skinner. Pickard's a battler. Pickard is he's not as technically sound, but he will battle. He'll dive. He'll lay sideways. He'll throw the 2-pad stacks, right? So I feel like the Oilers needed a little bit of that in their game. Look at what, is happening with McDavid. He's not scoring. And it's hard. It's hard for McDavid to even try to get good looks right now. So, you throw Pickard in, you try to change the rhythm of everything, but now you got to go back to Stuart Skinner, and he's got to be the one to win your game. And I know this, it's not all on him, but definitely a big part of the games tonight, game 6, is going to be, can Stuart Skinner steal a game or win a period, the first period, so that he feels good about himself and everybody else feels good about him.
Marty, what do you expect? I'm not asking for a goalie split. We've gone real hard on the goaltending angle, of course, but from the Florida New York series, what are you kind of expecting out of the Eastern Conference Final?
Well, this is going to be a fun series. I expect it to go the full length of 7 games. But again, like Carolina, New York could have gone 7, right? The first 3 games were 1-goal game, overtime. Like the Rangers come back in game 6, like it could have gone 7. So you could get a sweep, and it could be really tight, close hockey. But I think this is going to be one that I like the forward matchups. I like Barkov, Reinhart, Tkachuk, Verhaeghe against Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, Trocheck, right? I think this is what you want to see. You want to see the biggest stars, the bigger names, and you want to see them go head to head, which is why I thought Florida, Boston lacked a little, because Marchand was hurt, Pasternak didn't look himself. You don't have Bergeron, you don't have Krejci. It lacked a little bit of that star attraction up front. And when you look at Boston was a good team, but they didn't match well head to head. New York, Florida, that matches well head to head when you look at the forward groups.
Last one for you, Marty. Dallas is sitting there. They're now into the finals. They want Edmonton and Vancouver to obviously beat the crap out of each other for another couple of games, ideally. What's it going to take to defeat the Dallas Stars right now? Because by my estimation, they certainly look like the team to beat out of the West.
Yeah, look, I was a little bullish on the Stars this year when the Jets, the Avalanche, and the Stars were all tied up at 91 points. I made 2 statements at that point. I said the Jets are going to win the division, which they did not. And I also said whoever wins the Central Division will represent the Western Conference in the Stanley Cup Finals. I didn't think it was going to be the Dallas Stars. I thought Dallas was going to be 3rd in that division because they have youth, right? Wyatt Johnston is young. Stankoven is young. Even Jason Robertson is still young NHL-wise. But the youth is really stepping up. The youth is like saying to the NHL playoffs, you're kind of like my Bantam AAA year. Like I had fun playing for my provincial championship. I'm going to do the same thing. Like that's what the youth is doing right now. And it's impressive. Ottinger's playing really good, which we had moments this year where Ottinger was not good at all. So you put all of that together, I think that the Dallas Stars are the best team in the West. So I thought Colorado and the Oilers were the teams to make it to the finals. Right now, it looks like Dallas would have pressed on the gas pedal a little bit more and found a high-speed highway trying to get there. But they did get to 7 games against the Vegas Golden Knights, and they didn't lose a beat. So given that little break here is going to be good for them.
One last one, and ultimately the player and his health and his well-being is most important. I speak of Valeri Nichushkin. When that kind of news breaks into a dressing room, hours before a game, the reverberations and the impact, is it, obviously Dallas looked shell-shocked coming out for that game 5, Colorado looked shell-shocked. Is there a way to sort of overcome that, or is that just such a an incredible blow, that it's a difficult mountain to climb over from the perspective of those who are in the dressing room with them?
Yeah, so it's there's a human side to it, and I understand that hockey players and athletes in general, we're programmed to say next man up mentality. Like if somebody can't go, we're gonna fill that gap, and we're gonna go and we're gonna win, and robot-like attitude. This is now 2 times in 2 years that Valeri Nichushkin in the playoffs has something that kind of personal setback and a team setback as well. They didn't do well against Seattle last year when Nichushkin was not around, and they didn't do well against Dallas this year. So yeah, it affects the team, and it affected the team in a bad they just looked emotionally lost that game. I saw Nathan McKinnon slam the stick on the ice. I saw guys slam the boards. It wasn't the Colorado Avalanche, the high flying positive team that you always watch and you see. And I think it had a lot to do with it. So yeah, I mean, we hope that Val Nichushkin gets the help for himself, for his family, for his friends, for the people around him. But Colorado, 2 times in 2 years now, losing a big player like him, a big part of their success, that's really not easy to do.
Marty Biron, one of our favorites, always bringing great insight and analysis to your times here on the program. You more than filled the shoes of Ezra Ginsburg, let me tell you.
I didn't see. That's what happened. Next man up mentality. I didn't even think about it. I just played. I just went out and played. So thanks for the great assist. You guys were easy to play with.
Thank you, Marty. Have a great weekend. We'll do it again real soon, buddy. Take care.
Have a good one.
There he goes.
Thanks,
Marty Biron joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Always great to have Marty with us. The energy, the insight, especially when it comes to the goaltending side of things, Dave.
For sure. I was going to ask about 3,000 more questions, Drew, because, there's lots of questions about goaltending. I could have asked him about Thomas Milic, for God's sakes, not necessarily that he's watched him, but just in terms of development. There were a lot of questions we have, but that's what we'll save for the off season with Marty. But yeah, he's a tremendous guest. We love having him. He always brings, like you said, great energy and great insight.
Let's head to our final break. We'll come back. We'll wrap. It's Saturday morning. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey
Show. We're going to really wrap?
What?
Like we're going to wrap?
No. WRAP, not RAP.
Gotcha.
I'll be in Snoop Dogg in less than a month, though, so maybe I'll wrap there.
I was going to say.
Much more on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
"We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?"
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
It's all over, folks, and the run has come to an end.
You'll be so far away.
A Canadian team hasn't won the Cup in over 30 years.
And the Cup will stay south of the border.
Maybe it's time we try something different. This playoff season, let's cheer with the fans we've always cheered against. Team up for the Cup at Boston Pizza.
Hey Winnipeg, Wendell Clark here. I'm coming out there May 28th for the Rady JCC dinner. Myself, Dougie Gilmore, Grant Fuhr. Some good storytelling about Winnipeg beating us up when we used to come there. See you there.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. A couple minutes left before we wrap up for the Saturday of the long weekend. Any big plans, Mr. Dave M? Explore MB, things of that nature? You like to do that?
Yeah, I might join Joe up in the Interlake at some point at the family cottage. We'll see. But for today, Drew, the show will end. I will post the podcast. I will hope that it doesn't start raining as it says it's going to do in 23 minutes so I can go and get rid of my gnarly front yard and cut
After
it down.
we shamed you about it?
Well, I was planning on doing it yesterday. Unfortunately, my lawnmower wouldn't start. So that was that's actually really what precluded me from cutting the lawn.
Yeah.
But we'll see if I can get it going today. If not, I'll have to borrow one of my neighbors. And then once that's done, I'm into the backyard. Got to get the pond ready for the season. Got to get the all the stuff, my crops planted. I got lots of stuff to do in the backyard.
That's why we call you Green Thumb Manuk. It's not just gangrene. It's because of your gardening skills, not your poor blood flow. So those are important things for you to do. That's been a lot of fun this Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. And of course, we'll have great coverage all week long on the website, illegalcurve.com. And, you know, if news warrants, we will pop up here or there here on the program with a special edition of the show. The Jets haven't made any off-season splashes just yet. Aside from, of course, the Rick Bowness retirement announcement. But if and when that changes, you will hear about it first and foremost here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We want to say a big thank you to all of our sponsors. They make this show possible. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club. If you're looking for something to do tonight, 2 shows at Rumors, very few tickets available. rumorscomedyclub.com. I was there last night. I saw Josh Adam Myers. He's the comedian, and it's a really interesting show. It's different than maybe your standard stand-up show, but it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of crowd interactivity. It's a great way to spend a Saturday. Tickets at rumorscomedyclub.com. Big thanks to our friends at Grid Park, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Tough Duck, Betway, Boston Pizza, and of course Seagram's for their continued support of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. In case you missed any of the program. Yes, Dave M.
Just so folks know, though, there will still be content on our YouTube channel, though, because I've still got about 30 Moose end of season media availabilities to post. So just in case folks are feeling a lack, do not worry. We will still have some content coming up. I posted the ones with Ville Heinola and Simon Lundmark. Simon Lundmark, again, I just want to make this point because I know that folks
flying under the radar is what you're saying.
He's very Dillon DeMello-esque. People don't pay attention to what Simon Lundmark did this year. And I understand that because as I wrote about on illegalcurve.com, he's not flashy. He doesn't sort of, garnered big headlines in terms of, or doesn't score the flash. Yeah, I scored another 5 goals this year. A couple of them were pretty nice, but point is that the coaching staff, really, Eric Dubois, who is the D coach with the Moose, and head coach Mark Morrison, and also Craig Heisinger, the GM, all talked about kind of the jumps that Lundmark made. So I know that folks tend to forget about him, but remember, he's a 2019 second rounder. He was drafted after Ville Heinola. He was paired often with Ville Heinola. I'm just saying that he's a guy. We'll see. He knows he needs to have a big summer, but the organization. When I talked to Eric Dubois in December, he was very positive in terms of the development that Lundmark took from last year to this year. And then when I talked to Mark Morrison, both on Thursday, but also at the end of season media availabilities, which was in early May, we talked about the growth and the progress that they saw in Lundmark. So I'm just saying that, again, people tend to only focus on guys who put up a lot of points like Lambert or Chibrikov or even Parker Ford. But sometimes those guys who are a little under the radar, Tyrell Bauer, no, I still think he's going to need it, despite what T. Conopoli wants to do. I think he's going to need another year with the Moose. But Simon Lundmark might be someone that's worth paying attention to after 2 years here in Manitoba.
There you go. Much more Moose coverage to come on the YouTube channel, courtesy of Dave M. Big thanks to Scotty Billeck. Big thanks to Marty Biron for joining us in case you missed either of those interviews. The immediate replays on the YouTube channel. The podcast will be up shortly thereafter. We always appreciate all of you tuning in on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the podcast, and leave us feedback here, there, everywhere. Want your reviews of the show. Want to hear what you have to say about the broadcast that we bring you here on Illegal Curve. Whatever you have planned on this long weekend, we remind you to do it safely. We want you back here next Saturday. Do it responsibly. Have fun doing it, but be sure to be safe in all of your activities. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. For Ezra Ginsburg, who departed a little ago, for Dave Manuk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, live on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.